It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the keynote address on Cultural Foundations of Wellbeing, a framework for internationalizing well-being. The speaker of the session is Professor Mohsen Joshanloo, who is a personality and cross-cultural psychologist. His research focuses on mental well-being, culture, personality traits, emotions, and successful aging. With a global research outlook, he incorporates data from countries spanning 6 continents and advocates for the internationalization of psychological sciences by integrating insights from non-Western cultures. He's an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at Keimyung University and an honorary principal fellow at the Center for Wellbeing Science at the University of Melbourne. The chair of the session is Professor Snehalata Jaswal, who is currently a professor of psychology at Sikkim University, a product of Punjab University, Chandigarh, where she achieved positions in the merit list in BA Honours and MPhil. She began her professional career as a lecturer and founder head at the Department of Psychology, MCM DAV College, Chandigarh. She was awarded the Chevening Fellowship in 2004 and finished her PhD as a mature scholar from the University of Edinburgh in 2010. Currently, she has more than 400 citations of her work, with the main focus of research being human cognition, which she studies using experimental as well as correlational methods. She also has abiding interest in positive psychology, organizational behavior, and psychometrics. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're not audible, ma'am.
A second, I think I need to unmute myself.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible now.
Good morning, everyone. I very warmly welcome Professor Joshanloo for his session. Sir, I have read many of your papers and you are known internationally across the continents. Many thanks for accepting this invitation on behalf of NPPA. I thank you for accepting the information to address the audience today, but I will not put you in between the audience and yourself. So please start your presentation. Warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation. It's such an honor to be presenting today and talking about culture and well-being. So let's see if I can share my slides. I'm planning on 15 minutes.
That's great, sir. And then we'll have a very interactive session, I believe then. Thank you.
Can you see my slides?
Yes. Yes,
Cool.
It is visible, sir.
Awesome. We can start now. So today I'm going to talk about cultural foundations of well-being. This is my favorite topic. Now, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this aspect of cultural variation, from collectivism to individualism. This is really widely used in cultural research, and I believe it's very important for today's discussion. So on one side we have, and this is not a binary categorization of nations and cultures, just a spectrum. So any culture can be at some point on this spectrum, but usually Western cultures are individualistic and global majority cultures in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and indigenous populations are more collectivistic. So I will make some references to this distinction throughout my presentation today. All right, so we have a lot of studies on culture and well-being. This is a very rich body of literature, fortunately. So if your specialty is culture and well-being, you will find a lot. And it makes sense to you. When you see a new study coming in, it makes sense to you. You can understand it and place it next to other similar studies. But if your field is not culture and well-being, you may have some trouble, because we have hundreds, if not thousands, of studies on culture and well-being, and it's growing more and more. And it is starting to look fragmentary and piecemeal. So we need to we are at a point in culture and well-being research that we should start putting them together, synthesize these results, and start making frameworks. And today, I'm going to present a simple framework, which I believe it's useful. So this is a framework that I developed after years of studying culture and well-being. And my colleagues also joined me, and so we published a book chapter on it in 2021. This book chapter is open access. You just need to click, just search the name of the chapter. You can download it. And that's where we presented this four-dimensional framework for making sense of cultural difference in well-being. This chapter was published during COVID, and I really it just never happened that I get a chance to present it. So this is the first time I'm really presenting on this frame. Okay, so what is it about? Basically, the idea is that when we look at different concepts of well-being from different cultures, and we want to make sense of the differences, four dimensions are very useful. So many of concepts of well-being formulated in different cultures, Western and non-Western, we see that they vary along these four dimensions. So this helps us to systemize and understand these cultural variations. So let's talk about them one by one. The first dimension is hedonic versus eudaimonic emphasis. Two strange words. Hedonic means something related to emotions, fun, pleasure. Now, if you define well-being based on emotional experiences, fun, happiness, then you have a hedonic emphasis. You have a hedonic concept of well-being. Now, eudaimonic, which is even a stranger word, is related to not to emotional experiences. Instead, it's related to virtues. So if you're living a virtuous life, then we can say you have well-being. Now, if you define well-being based on exercising virtues or optimal function, so the more psychological term for it is optimal functioning, skills, showing skills in your life, having a virtuous lifestyle from a psychological perspective, then we can say your concept of well-being is eudaimonic. Now, the idea is that when we look at different concepts of well-being, different theories of well-being coming from different cultures, I see that these concepts of well-being vary on this continuum from hedonic to eudaimonic. Some cultures emphasize hedonic aspects. So some cultures define well-being based on emotional experience, pleasure, fun, how much positive emotions you experience and how much negative emotions you don't experience. So this is very central. Some other cultures define well-being not based on emotional experiences, but based on your lifestyle, how much your lifestyle is showing virtues, how much you're exercising virtues, how much you are optimally functioning in your life. I believe that Western cultures are more likely to emphasize hedonic well-being. So if you look at Western concepts of well-being, all the theories and models, you see that emotional well-being is taken seriously. Now, for example, this book, Well-Being, The Foundations of Hedonic Psychology, edited by Kahneman and Dinner and Schwartz. This is a very important book. In the introduction, the editors write that we know well-being has many components, but hedonic well-being is at the center of it. And these authors are highly influential in Western well-being science. Also, if you look at the modern Western economics, you see that there are many voices saying that happiness is the ultimate goal. So I see a strong bias in Western models, emphasis of hedonic well-being and defining well-being based on emotional experiences. Now, Frank Martella is my friend, my colleague. I love his work, and he recently has published he's a Western psychologist from Europe. He has published an integrative work on theories of well-being, and I like this model, and I think this is a great model because it's not reductionistic. So you see both hedonic well-being, which is called subjective well-being here. You see both eudaimonic well-being and subjective well-being. Many theories from the West, they drop eudaimonic well-being and say it's just Hedonic well-being is the real well-being. But here, at least we see all of them. But I see an implicit assumption here, which may not be obvious at first glance. Here we see that eudaimonic well-being is the predictor of hedonic well-being. So to me, this may mean that I never talked with Frank about this, but I see an implicit assumption that the real well-being is hedonic well-being, and eudaimonic well-being is just a predictor. So it's valuable because it leads to hedonic well-being. So I'm convinced that Western psychology pays a lot of attention to eudaimonic well-being, no doubt, but still I think that hedonic well-being is considered very central relative to other cultures. Hedonic well-being is emphasized more. Now let's talk about collectivistic cultures. So I joined the session a couple of minutes earlier, and I heard Professor Bawook said happiness makes no sense in India. That's exactly what I'm trying to say here. Happiness in the hedonic sense doesn't make that much sense because there are more important things in non-Western cultures. So in my opinion, after looking at many theories and models coming from non-Western cultures, I'm convinced that emotional experience is important, of course. It's very important in pop culture and in traditional culture, but that's not central. So non-Western cultures have other values that are way more important than emotional experience and fun and pleasure. For example, many of them are religious. Religious virtues are very important. Living a virtuous life is at the heart of well-being. And following the emphasis is not on really how your subjective feelings, if you have pleasant feelings or unpleasant feelings. Instead, the focus on many of these cultures is on virtues and duties, how much you are performing your duties, collective duties. Also, I see many Asian cultures and probably other cultures from other continents that there's this dialectic view on emotions, which says that positive emotions should be maximized and negative emotions should be minimized. We need a balance between them. So I have a quote here, for example. It's my favorite quote from a classic anthropological work on Javanese ethnic group in Indonesia. Happiness and unhappiness are, after all, just the same. Now, in many Asian cultures, this makes sense. But from a Western perspective, this seems like an artistic piece. It doesn't mean to really have a factual meaning. But in many non-Western cultures, this really makes sense because there's this dialectical view on emotions. You shed tears when you laugh and also when you cry. And besides, they imply one another. Happy now, unhappy later. Unhappy now, happy later. The reasonable, prudent, wise person strives not for happiness, but for a tranquil detachment which frees themselves from their endless oscillation between gratification and frustration. Many non-Western cultures have this view about traditionally. This view about emotions, not just to maximize positive feelings and minimize negative feelings, basically to transcend this duality and find happiness somewhere else. So this is a measure. So how do we measure? We can easily measure eudaimonic well-being and hedonic well-being. There are many good scales out there, but how can we measure people's approach, people's eudaimonic emphasis or hedonic emphasis? Now, this is very tricky because if you use a normal rating scale, items, hedonic items, eudaimonic items, ask people how much do you think this is important, you usually get high scores for all of them because people really want both hedonic well-being and eudaimonic well-being. So you don't get much out of a simple Likert type scale. That's why I created a choosing scale, epsative scale, if you will. So there are 8 items and you are forced to pick 5 of them. So 4 of them are eudaimonic and 4 of them are hedonic. For example, feeling positive is hedonic, and having goals and direction in life is eudaimonic. Now, the point is, if you choose one eudaimonic here, you cannot choose one hedonic. So there's a competition, a trade-off here. That's how we can force people to show the approach, because there's really a competition here. So you cannot really, every choice you make, you lose the opportunity of another choice. So we can squeeze out people's opinions about hedonic and eudaimonic well-being using this kind of scale, in my opinion. So these adult samples from many countries, including India. And as you can see, feeling positive and having goals and direction in life are the most popular ones, along with enjoying yourself. So what I can say is that hedonic and eudaimonic well-being is favored in all cultures, no doubt. So people really want to maximize both. However, still, we want to ask the question, which one is more important in each culture? Again, this is student samples from like 15 countries, the same pattern. We see both hedonic and eudaimonic items are popular, but this is the main finding. And the bars are showing hedonism scores, the average number of hedonic items chosen in each culture. Now, which cultures are showing the highest score on hedonism? They have chosen the maximum number of hedonic items, USA and New Zealand. And which culture has chosen the fewest number of hedonic items? Iran. This plot shows it better. This is a scatter plot, and you see that there's strong negative correlation. Eudaimonism, this is the number of eudaimonic items chosen, which is the exact opposite of hedonism. So you see there's a negative correlation between eudaimonism and globalization. The more a culture is globalized, the less likely that they have a eudaimonic emphasis. And less globalized cultures, more traditional cultures, more collectivistic cultures, are more likely to pick eudaimonic items over hedonic items. So these findings are consistent with my argument that in more traditional collectivistic, the global majority cultures, we see that there's an emphasis on eudaimonic well-being is considered more important. And in Western highly globalized cultures, we see an emphasis on hedonic well-being. Next dimension, we have 4 dimensions. This is the second one. Self-enhancement versus self-transcendence. Again, when I look at different theories of well-being, models of well-being coming from indigenous cultures, Western cultures, non-Western cultures, when I look at them, I clearly see that the emphasis on self is different across this model. In Western individualistic cultures, I see a strong emphasis on self. It's important how you think about yourself. It's important if you like yourself or you don't like yourself. So it's a central aspect of almost all Western models of well-being. Your opinion about yourself matters. So historically, from the first day, Western psychology has been emphasizing self-esteem, strong ego, self-confidence, assertiveness, and personal success. This is a classic book written in 1958 by Yahoda. Her goal was to synthesize all published research on mental health before her time from Western psychology. So she put together all the insights from clinical psychology, psychodynamics, humanistic psychology, mainstream psychology, and developmental psychology. And she introduced a 6-dimensional model of well-being based on Western psychology of her time. And the first dimension that she found is emphasized in all of these theories was, we cannot say all, but most of the Western theories, was attitude towards the self. So most of the dominant theories of well-being in the West, historically, if you look at them, you see there's an emphasis on self-esteem and what you think about yourself. That matters. That's one of the indicators of well-being in Western psychology and especially well-being science. What about collectivistic cultures? When I look at non-Western cultures, from many cultures, including India, I don't see a strong emphasis on strong ego, self-esteem. Basically, what you think about yourself is important, but it's not central. And sometimes some of them say, doesn't matter what you think about yourself. Why would that matter? Instead, what else matters? I get this vibe that something is more important than what you think about yourself. And that is what other people think about you, what your community, what your goal, group, what your parents, what they think about you. So I believe that if we want to really formulate well-being from the perspective of non-Western cultures, it's better to focus what other people think about you. So your perception of other people's opinion of you, your reputation, and that's actually more important and makes more practical sense. So there's no emphasis on self-enhancement, promoting yourself. Actually, there are a lot of sanctions against promoting yourself, enhancing yourself. People may start thinking you are arrogant, you're showing pride, you're showing off, so it's better not to do it. In some sense, you should do the opposite. You should be modest, humble. You should not show off and show high levels of modesty. The point is, even though you should have some critical views on yourself, it's helpful, it's instrumental because it helps you improve as a person. And in fact, some non-Western cultures believe that the self is an illusion, even it doesn't exist. So it really doesn't matter if you love yourself or not, because there's no self. So if you look at the book chapter, there are a lot of studies, empirical studies. So the arguments, every single argument we make, we present a lot of empirical studies. I don't have really time to review all those empirical studies, but I'm just telling you, you can find a lot of research, published research in the book chapter. Just here, giving you a couple of examples. For example, when we ask people to describe yourself in Japan and in USA, just freely write down some adjectives that describes you. In Japan, people create a balanced list of positive and negative adjectives. In the USA, there is a positivity bias. Most of the adjectives people produce to describe themselves are positive. So you can do this study in many different cultures. You usually get the sense that Western cultures, when we ask people to describe themselves, they produce more positive descriptors. And in non-Western cultures, more likely to see self-critical attitudes. But other studies also show something interesting. In the USA, when you describe yourself, if you create a lot of negative items, this may predict depression. So there is a correlation between negativity of your self-description and some mental disorders. But in Japan, the correlation is non-existent or weak. So you can be self-critical in Japan, and this is not a bad sign. It's not a sign of ill-being. It's not a sign of low well-being, because your opinion about yourself matters less, according to these cultures. Now, when we put these cultures side by side, individualistic cultures, my understanding so far, looking at all theories from these cultures, they emphasize a sense of uniqueness, how you are different from other people. Your sense of uniqueness is an important part of your well-being. You have to understand you are unique. You have to understand that you have unique talents, values, and those are very important for you. On the other hand, your shared identity is not emphasized. I really haven't found a strong emphasis in any Western theory on well-being on shared identity, what you share with your group, with the collective. That really is not really the central focus of Western well-being models. And finally, what other people think about you, this actually is a taboo. None of the Western models care about what other people think about you. So you should not, they teach you, forget about that. It's just you. You should actually discount what other people think about you. If you pay attention to other people's opinion of you, something is wrong with you. Maybe you are not strong enough. You don't have a strong ego. So it's actually a taboo. It's even difficult for me to find a scientific term to refer to this. If someone wants to care about what other people think about them, there's nothing in Western psychology, at least in well-being science. In social psychology, I found something like a relational value, perceived relational value. I found it, but this is not part of well-being. In well-being models, it's a taboo to think that to think about how other people think about me. So I created this term, perceived social esteem. Now this is de-emphasized in Western models. Let's look at collectivistic models. I see that shared identity is highly emphasized in all indigenous and traditional and non-Western models. Basically, many of them say that you are part of a larger whole and you should lose yourself. You should become one with the whole. So basically, shared identity is more central than your sense of self-esteem, and your sense of uniqueness is actually discounted and de-emphasized. Instead, your shared identity is emphasized. And finally, perceived social esteem is considered more important, and it makes a lot of sense. Like in a collectivistic context, it's important what other people think about me. So I always should pay attention to that, and I should act in such a way that they have a positive opinion of me. And this is not a taboo. This is accepted to care about other people's opinion of you. Next dimension is autonomy versus harmony. When I look at different concepts of well-being formulated in different cultures, I see that some of them emphasize autonomy more and some of them de-emphasize autonomy. Instead, they emphasize other values. Individualistic cultures, as you can guess, emphasize autonomy. So if you look at any Western model that we have at the moment, you'll see a strong emphasis on autonomy, agency, mastery, self-directedness, and self-determination. The idea is that you should regulate your behaviors, your decisions from inside, not from outside. The source of your decisions and knowledge and actions should originate from inside you, not from outside. And that's a sign of well-being, if you can do that. In fact, I see another trend. These implicitly, at least implicitly, there are implicit assumptions in any cultural model. At least implicitly, the idea is that you should defy social pressures, social influence. Now, if you want to have well-being, you should be strong enough to defy what other people want you to do and make your own decisions. You should freely and autonomously make decisions. If needed, should be constantly defying other people's influence. What about non-Western cultures? I see a nuanced picture here. First of all, this is my belief: in all cultures, autonomy is important. Self-determination is important. I cannot find any, this is a human thing. It's not really cultural. Autonomy is important. So non-Western models also emphasize autonomy, but what kind of autonomy? The Western type of autonomy is different from non-Western type of autonomy. In non-Western cultures, autonomy is not the opposite of conformity. You can show conformity at the same time stay autonomous. This is it's not really a paradox. I can use my autonomy to do my duties for my collective. So what's wrong with that? So I have autonomy. I use my autonomy to perform my responsibilities and duties. So what's wrong here? There's no paradox. But to a Western eye, I'm not generalizing, but when I look at the Western theories, I see this bias that conformity is the opposite of autonomy. So if you are autonomous, you cannot really conform, and you should do the opposite. You should defy other people's opinions. So in non-Western cultures, autonomy is important, but autonomy is used in a collectivistic way to to act as a member of a group. You use your autonomy to act as a good member of your group. And also, another thing that I see, there's a very strong emphasis on autonomy in Western models. But in non-Western models, I see autonomy is important, yes, but there are many other important things, and you should make a balance. So if you emphasize your autonomy and forget about other values, then you use your autonomy in the wrong way and create unhappiness and low well-being for yourself. So instead, you should use your autonomy consistently with other values. You should balance it against other values. So in the process of exercising your autonomy, you should not lose balance and harmony. So I believe collectivistic cultures try to make a balance between autonomy and harmony. And a good autonomy is one that increases harmony. So you should use your autonomy in order to create more harmonious relationships with other people and with other entities. And when I look at well-being models coming from non-Western cultures, I see that instead of just focusing on autonomy and how great autonomy is and how good an indicator of well-being autonomy is, they also mention autonomy. You say you should use your initiative, you should use your freedom. Freedom is a good thing universally, no doubt. But autonomy is just like any other value. It has positive sides and negative sides. You should be careful. You should actually use other values, collectivistic values, to learn how to use your autonomy. Now, I'm not an expert on Indian culture, but I know a little bit because I read a lot of articles from different cultures, including India. Now, this article was interesting for me. It's about Hinduism. And so this paragraph starts with this sentence: the central concept of early Hinduism is the idea of harmony or order, called Rita or Rita, a form of natural law. So you know it better than me. And it ends the paragraph, I think this is the last sentence of the paragraph, hence maintenance of balance and harmony came to be seen as the important aim of human life in Hinduism. So harmony is really central in many many traditional cultures, many non-Western cultures, but somehow in Western cultures is overshadowed by autonomy. And this article is on happiness in Indian tradition. So this is an analysis of indigenous concept of happiness in India, the degree to which a person develops harmony with the inner and the outer world decides his or her level of happiness. Okay, I have a measure called fear of happiness scale. So this is a kind of interesting concept. Some people are aversive to happiness. They think happiness may have negative consequences. So let's look at some of the items. Disasters often follow good fortune. Having lots of joy and fun causes bad things to happen. So we have collected many data sets in different cultures, over 20 countries, just my team. But other researchers have also produced more data. Now, I put together data from 3 of our own studies. These are small sample sizes, not representative, so let's use caution, but the pattern is clear. Collectivistic cultures show more aversion to happiness, and individualistic cultures show less aversion to happiness. Again, Professor Babouk's sentence comes to my mind: happiness makes no sense in India. India had so far has the highest recorded score. Again, I'm emphasizing sample sizes are small. This is not definite. It's just speculative. So let's use caution. But still, India is among the highest scores on aversion to happiness. And now, how is it related to the discussion about harmony? We know that one of the reasons that some cultures show fear of happiness, it's not because they are unhappy. So I strongly believe that at the national level, at the cultural level, fear of happiness is not a sign of unhappiness. Instead, it's how a culture perceives emotions. Now, one of the reasons that some cultures have aversive attitudes toward happiness is that, and this comes from qualitative studies and my review of cultural analysis and conceptions of well-being and in general cultural psychology. One reason that people may think happiness may have negative consequences because they know that in a collectivistic context, if you keep showing your happiness, so I'm happy today, I'm very successful, I'm very happy, this may disturb your relationship with other people. People may start thinking you are showing off, you're proud, you are selfish, right? And somehow it's better to be cautious about expressing your feelings freely and keep the bigger context in mind that your ultimate goal is to keep the social harmony, spiritual harmony. It's not just to maximize your personal happiness and advertise it. You have a bigger goal, right? So let's keep the harmony and don't forget the dialectical views on happiness and on happiness that many traditional cultures believe that it's not just that easily like just maximize positive feelings. We have to make a balance. We have to transcend this duality. So one of the reasons fear of happiness is higher in collectivistic cultures is because harmony is more important here. And personal sense of happiness may disturb that sense of harmony. And the last dimension is personal control versus contextual influences. So when I look at contemporary, modern, dominant Western models of well-being, I see that the idea is that, okay, what should I do if I want to be happy? What determines my happiness and my well-being? The idea is that you kind of it's a personal business. You have to do it yourself. If you are unhappy, it's your fault. If you are happy, it means you did a great job. So ultimately, your happiness, your well-being is in your own hand. So your sense of personal agency coming from your inner strength is important. Your choices are important. For example, Seligman in 2004, in his book, a very influential book, says, and this is a very important message from that book, changing circumstances is usually impractical and expensive. Meaning that instead of focusing on the circumstances, the context, external world, focus on yourself, your feelings, your strength, your personal values, and you cannot do much about the external world, and it doesn't matter because happiness is in your own hand. What about collectivistic cultures? I get a completely different feeling when I look at collectivistic cultures' concepts of well-being. These formulas, these conceptualizations of well-being are more open to the idea that my well-being is not entirely in my own hand. I don't have 100% control on my well-being. They appreciate the fact that there are many other factors that are influencing my well-being. So they emphasize that the world is complicated. There are spiritual agents. There's the universe. There's the ancestors, spirits. There is my relationship to my group, to my nation, to my land. These are important in my sense of well-being. I should, if I want to be to have high well-being, I have to connect with multiple levels. I have to work at multiple levels. The context, the circumstances matter. It's not just my personal decision. At the theoretical level, it's appreciated that happiness is not entirely in my own hand. It's a bigger project, and many other factors are influencing my personal happiness. For example, if you look at all indigenous models of well-being that we have, for example, this one is from Maori indigenous culture in New Zealand. You see the Western models basically mostly focus on mental and emotional aspects, maybe family and social. But here we see spiritual, physical, land, and roots. These are three important pillars of well-being from an indigenous perspective, paying a lot of attention to the context. Australian indigenous model well-being, again, we see connection to community, one of the pillars, connection to culture, connection to country, spirituality and ancestors, connection to body, family and kinship. And then we have mind and emotions as well. So I get the sense that collectivistic models are more holistic and pay more attention to contextual factors, including fate. Many collectivistic cultures, there are many people who believe that my well-being is not entirely in my own hand, it's also fated. So that's the part of it that is out of my personal control. Now let's look at an example from India. So these authors look at a Western model, a comprehensive model that I really like, Key's model of well-being. It has 3 dimensions: emotional, social, psychological. So it's one of the most comprehensive Western models. So they look at this model and say, okay, we like it, it's good, but something is missing here. So the most comprehensive model that we have in one of the most in Western literature still is not enough for India, because the authors conclude that we need to add a dimension, ecological well-being, as the 4th dimension. At the bare minimum, we need to add this aspect to it. Then it becomes better for Indian culture. So you see, all non-Western models try in one way or another to expand the focus on personal agency and personal aspects. I have another scale, fragility of happiness beliefs. This is how much people think that happiness is fragile and it changes. And this is a way to measure people's opinion about how controllable happiness is. So if you believe that happiness is fragile, this means I don't have much control over it. It can change and it's not under my control. So fragility is a sign of a lack of control. So you are appreciating that happiness is not entirely under my personal control. And if you believe happiness is not fragile, this means that you have an idea that happiness is highly under your control. So you can control it and make it less volatile. We collected data, student samples from like 15 countries. And again, it's clear that this table is very helpful. It's clear that in collectivistic cultures, the level of fragility is higher. So we see that more collectivistic cultures believe that happiness is more fragile, which in my mind means that we have less control over our happiness because contextual factors, external factors are important. Spiritual factors, fate. And in individualistic cultures, we see that people believe happiness is less fragile. And fragility of happiness is also correlated with fatalism also. So one source of fragility basically is fate. I don't know how my fate is playing out. It's not under my control. Okay, every few years, so we are done with the 4-dimensional framework. Right? Every few years, we publish one update on our thinking about culture and well-being. This article, again, is an open access article, Ideal Personhood Through the Ages. So genealogy of modern concepts of well-being. This article was published a few months ago, and we present an update, new ideas. So let me tell you what the key message is. After looking at many non-Western cultures, how they define well-being. Western and non-Western, like contrasting them, and all dominant Western models and a lot of models from non-Western cultures. I got this idea that authenticity is a central value in Western models of well-being. Authenticity basically means I have a true self, or I have created a true self. And this is very important for me. My dependent depends on my true self, my authentic self. So I have to respect my true self. I have to discover it. I have to express it in my decisions. I have to live my life based on my true self. Now, this is very central. Many Western models explicitly emphasize authenticity, but some of them implicitly. But almost everywhere you can see traces of the importance of authenticity. So in my mind, authenticity is a central value underlying all Western thinking on well-being, modern times. So authenticity is very critical, coming from Western traditions of modernity and existential and romantic schools of thinking. And now it dominates psychology, especially positive psychology and well-being research. So this is what we found. And we wrote about it. We made this argument, presented a lot of evidence that this is the case. I believe that all the characteristics of Western models of well-being are supporting the underlying value of authenticity. So hedonic emphasis is emotions. How much your emotions are very important in the discourse of authenticity. Like, these are mine. These are showing me what to do, like coming from inside. So emotions become more important. Subjective feelings become very important. Self-enhancement, of course, when you have this true precious self, you have to express it, you have to enhance it, you have to like it, you have to respect it. Autonomy, you should make decisions based on your true self. So, and you have to defy social pressure and social influence. Your decisions should come from inside you. Finally, you are your own CEO, and you don't need to really be influenced by the context. What matters is you, and you are kind of separate from the context, and you can have your own place. You can battle the context. You don't need to be influenced by the context. You have a lot of powers coming from inside. Now let's compare Western models. In this context, I can call them authenticity-based models of well-being, and non-Western majority world models. Here, it's kind of felt, let's call it collectivity-based models. So in Western models, there's emphasis on feelings and subjective experiences, and self-enhancement, autonomy, and atomism, like my personal agency versus the context agency. In non-Western cultures, I see these alternatives. Emphasis is not on feelings are important, but not central. So emphasis is on virtues rather than on feelings. Also, feelings are also important. Emphasis is not on inflating yourself, promoting yourself, enhancing yourself. It's basically on transcending yourself, because these models emphasize shared identity. Emphasis is not on autonomy, making personal decisions, defying social pressure. Instead, autonomy is also one way to achieve harmony. So the ultimate goal is harmony, not autonomy. And finally, context is important. We understand that we are a small part of a bigger system. So it's a holistic understanding of well-being. Now, India, where is you know it better than me. Of course, you know it better than me. So I don't say anything, my opinion. I just read this article written by, it seems like an Indian person. So looking at traditional Indian culture, the author says that these are the central values in traditional Indian culture. Tyaga, sorry for my bad pronunciation, Tyaga, Dana, Nishta, Satya, Ahimsa, Upeksha. And finally says, the Indian concept of dharma related to harmony has acted as a sustaining principle through the ages. Now, I don't see autonomy here. Of course, autonomy is important in Indian context. It's not in the list of top values. I don't see autonomy, personal control, authenticity, hedonic happiness here. I see the opposite. I see a collectivity-based system of values, and the concept of well-being for India should be, in my opinion, should be closer to this than this. It doesn't mean that self-enhancement is not important in India. It's important, but it's not the central aspect of well-being. So if you understand the most important parts of Indian well-being, then you can also start self-enhancing, but in a way that it doesn't disturb your well-being. The idea is that that's not central. It's not at the heart of well-being. So at the heart of well-being are virtues, self-transcendence, harmony, and a holistic understanding of your behavior. So conclusion, this is my last slide. I don't say, this is not my message. So let me be clear. I'm a mainstream psychologist. I use modern statistical techniques and methodology. So I'm not saying that Western models are bad. We don't need them. We should throw them away. They are harmful. Quite the opposite. I have very positive opinion of Western models. I have promoted them. I keep promoting them. They're useful in their own context. So let's keep them. Let's learn from them. They are very good model to make non-Western models methodologically. But the problem I see is the lack of non-Western models. We have a lot of non-Western models, but they are local, and they focus on the specific ethnicity. That's valuable, but if we want to improve this narrative and discourse, we need to create more systems. We need to systemize. We need to create more frameworks and better measurement tools that apply not just to one local area, but to more areas and populations. So I think that it's a really good time to start thinking about non-Western models of well-being in a systematic way, in a way that mainstream psychology accepts it, not reject it. So we should use modern techniques, statistical methods, modern technologies, modern methodologies. So the result is something that psychology is ready to accept, and this is our goal. And we have been trying to reach that point for a long time. Keep trying. And I just want to highlight one point here. And a non-Western model of well-being is not just useful for non-Western populations, but there are many people in Western cultures that have collectivistic values, they value harmony, self-transcendence, holism, and they emphasize virtues more than emotions. So it's also useful for many people in Western cultures. So if we want to have tools and theories and frameworks that reflect the global majority nations, traditional cultures, indigenous cultures, non-Western cultures, Asian, Latin American, African cultures, we need to create these new systems, because Western models are useful, but they cannot completely capture what well-being means in non-Western cultures. So they are biased against non-Western people. I would say someone who is completely healthy and have high level of well-being based on a Western model may end up getting a low score and being classified as someone who doesn't have well-being. So we need to have better non-Western models of well-being, and the framework that I introduced today, I hope is useful for some researchers who want to go towards that direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Joshanloo. It was really illustrative to hear your talk.
Thank you.
You gave us a framework which we are sure to use in future to compare happiness across various cultures. I know that the next speaker is probably here, but I can't refrain from a quick question, if I may. Is
Sure.
that all right with you, sir?
Sure. Yep.
Well, my question is regarding the scales that you have, the fear of happiness scale and the fragility of happiness scale. I found them very, very interesting, and particularly more so as you say that they are not really linked to being unhappy. Yeah. I
Yes.
see it more as a cognitive appraisal of happiness. I agree with you there that they have very little to do with the hedonic aspect of happiness. It's more a reappraisal and appraisal of what happiness is. And as you said, it is different across cultures and maybe more in collectivistic cultures. So, is there a way to combine these two scales? Can we use them in combination or perhaps take them as subscales of a general uh, I wouldn't call it negative appraisal or general fear of appraisal maybe because fragility of happiness and fear of happiness themselves would be related, don't you think so?
Absolutely. So I have created with my team, of course, we have created several measures of not well-being level. These are measures of conceptions of well-being. So basically, these are measures that measure
These are
what people.
essentially appraisals of well-being, if I may.
Yes. So we call it the conceptions of well-being, and appraisals of well-being is another beautiful term for it. So this is really not measuring your level of well-being. It measures what you think about well-being. And in the two examples you mentioned, fragility of happiness and fear of happiness, they are correlated. Yes, they are positively correlated. And also, we see some negative correlation between fear of happiness and fragility of happiness and actual levels of happiness at the personal level. It's also different in different cultures, but sometimes it is related to, for example, depressive symptoms, but at the cultural level, when we are studying countries and cultures, not people, the picture is completely different. We see that, for example, there's no correlation between a culture's level of happiness and a view on happiness, like a fear of happiness. Instead, we see that it's reflective of the emotional approaches that the culture has. Collectivistic cultures have this dialectical approach that we should balance emotions. We should not target just increasing happiness. And that's what is reflected here. So yes, we have created 8 measures of conceptions of happiness. So fragility of happiness, fear of happiness, externality of happiness, flexibility of happiness, eudaimonism. So yeah, all of them are on my website. You can look at
Well,
them.
you
These
already
are
answered my next. Sorry to butt in, but you already answered my next question, which was like, how is it related to locus of control? It would be, I would think, very much related within the individual. Of course, we are using it to, compare cultures, but I think there would be individual differences also on these scales,
absolutely, yeah.
and it would be related to, for example, locus of control, internal or external locus of control, personal circumstances maybe. So I found the skills and your conceptualization, of course, absolutely fascinating. Thank you, sir. Any
Yes,
other
thank you so
questions,
much.
please? Sorry, I went first, but let me see if there are any other questions. Anybody else who would like to ask something? Shabpriti, Sargam, I can see you there. Anyone else? Okay, so I think people are I think the next speaker is already there, Professor Jean Nakamura. Is that right?
That's
And
right.
Professor G. Padmaja is sharing the session. So I'll go to you then. Uh, thank you very much for enlightening us today, Professor Joshanloo, and I hope to get in touch with you sometime and take
Thank
more
you so much.
advantage of this interactive session we've had. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. The
Mr.
pleasure is all
Preeti,
mine.
over to you. Okay, thank you, sir.
I would like to
Sure.
extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Jaswal for expertly guiding the session and Professor Joshanloo for delivering such a thought-provoking address. We truly appreciate the time and effort you have dedicated to sharing your knowledge with us. With that, I now hand it over to Sargam to take us forward. Thank you.